This is the CreaseCast.
Hello, folks. We are live in studio. Well, I should say we, because you're always live in studio.
That's true, kind of. Yeah, that's true.
You're always live in studio. I am not always live in studio, but today we are, as you can probably tell by the drastic difference in audio quality and production quality.
That's right.
If you're watching our YouTube channel, you can see the zoom in on my, I guess my hair looking a little rough. But
No, it looks fine.
Oh, my shirt isn't buttoned up. Is it inside out too?
No, I don't think
No,
so. I
it's
think
okay.
you're good. I think you're good.
It's not inside out. That'd be really embarrassing. I'm gonna button it up. Anyway.
Oh, here. I'll throw the camera over to me while you do that.
Okay.
It's been a while since I think the last time we did an in-person show was.
I do not have a dog.
You have a dog now.
Yes.
Was.
If I have not mentioned it on this show 17 times.
Yeah, it's like
I definitely have a dog.
You have a dog. That's your whole gimmick.
My whole thing is I am a dog dad now.
Yeah, that's Cody.
Hockey is second now to
dog,
the
which
dog dad
which fair. Like that's the way it should be. If I had a dog, it'd be the same way.
It's just very tiring, and it's a little tough getting out here, even though you're literally like
10 minutes?
10 minutes away from my work.
Yeah,
but I take the dog, which I have one. I have a dog. If I haven't
you have a
mentioned it yet.
dog?
I do
what?
have a dog.
Crazy.
And this dog I take with me to work, and because he's at a stage now where he's just a piece of shit nightmare anywhere, not at home, getting him to settle down while we were in studio wouldn't be possible.
No, he'd be trying to chime in under the table.
Oh, he'd probably chew all these cables. He'd knock over the stand. He'd knock over the camera. He'd probably eat your tree right there. He'd go to town on all these bobbleheads. He'd tear the jerseys
He
down
would somehow
too.
just be scaling the ceiling.
Oh, yeah, like the guy's an idiot. He'll just like eat anything at this point. It's too much. So I locked him in the trunk.
Oh, no.
He's out back right now, and we're gonna celebrate with a nice crispy ice cold redacted.
Oh, that's right.
Not sponsored the program.
They can if they want to.
They can if they want to, but
they know who they are.
Ignoring our DMs, which is very rude.
Yeah.
But we're here to talk about some playoffs and a bit of Canuck stuff, because obviously we didn't have a Monday show because we didn't really have much to talk about, or we recorded, and then Lachlan felt that he came off like a rambling maniac, which is true. He does do that. Yeah. And so we scrapped the show
for a couple of reasons.
For a couple of reasons.
Too. There was it was mainly because Jamie was not able to do the entire was not going to be able to do the entire show, and we knew that ahead of time because she had a thing that night.
Yeah.
And she's not here today, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
She was initially going to be. She's got another thing she's doing today. But the other day she had to leave like early, so it was going to be like, okay, we knew we were probably going to be like it was going to be like she was going to be there for like the first half of the show, and you and I would be done for the rest.
Yeah.
But then you got home and found it out that somebody, like literally the apartment upstairs from yours in your building, was doing massive construction at like 5 p.m.
So for 3 days straight. So this is the scary thing. So I sent you the videos. We won't play them on the show because they're so obnoxious. But for like 3 to 4 days straight, it wasn't the unit directly above me. It was actually a floor above.
Okay.
And so the video you're hearing, where it sounds deafening, that's actually a floor above the guy above me.
Oh, no.
So the poor guy above me is dealing with probably much worse than what I was dealing with.
Jesus Christ.
Because I obviously walked the dog, and I kind of looked up at their patio to see what was going on, and they have like a tile cutter. So I think what they were doing was they were completely renovating their kitchen or something. And so from basically 9 a.m. until 6:30 to 7:30 for 4 days straight, they were fucking hammering their entire kitchen apart, like sawing tiles, sawing wood, like using drills, like basically making all noise imaginable.
Till when? Till what time?
Till like 6:30 or 7:30 at night.
Okay, they're like, I'm stunned by that because I was like 99% sure that there are like rules, especially in like apartment buildings, where it's like you can't do construction past like 5 because people have to sleep at a certain time, right? Especially if they get up early.
So this is my issue with this, and I don't mean to go on a tangent because I know you guys want to hear us talk about hockey and not my issues with my current Strata Corporation. But a while ago, I tweeted about how we had this big, gorgeous, beautiful tree in our property. We're on the ground floor. Like the branches swept aside, provided this gorgeous natural cover. It was wonderful during the rain. It was wonderful during the summer. You could hang out, get a nice breeze through, and you didn't have to worry about the street. And then our landscapers decided, let's just cut it down. Without consulting us, saying anything, they just cut every single branch off of this tree, basically like 50 feet up. And so it's like this weird monstrosity. And
like
I asked
on
them,
one side? Like
no,
just
like basically like if you're looking on our YouTube channel, like if like the tree was like a normal pine tree, like up to the top.
Okay.
But not a pine tree. It was like some kind of weird green stick like tree.
Mm-hmm.
They basically just shaved like the bottom chunk, the bottom quarter of it,
Oh.
and then it kept on going. Because I asked them, I'm like, why would you do that? Like the tree looks like disgusting, and you destroyed our natural privacy. And they're like, oh, there's a rat problem, which wasn't true. I don't have rats at my property, so bullshit. And then so I built the fence, and I believe you've seen that fence when you came over.
I have.
And so
very nice fence.
Thank you. I built it myself with the help of my mother's boyfriend, who helped me bring the stuff to my house. And so one day, the landscapers that is, decided to cut down a bunch of hedges around my property as well. And so the tree is gone, which was the biggest natural privacy screen, and then they cut down a bunch of hedges that kept dying because they weren't taking care of them. So instead of replacing them, there's just holes on the like planted garden part surrounding my patio. And so I was like, well, what the fuck? Like,
and are you not allowed to plant anything there yourself?
I'm not allowed to. That technically the garden part is the Strata Corporation's, but anything on the inside I can put in whatever.
Terrific.
Which is great. So when they cut down the tree, which was 2 years ago, mind you, I said, are you going to replace the hedges around my patio? Because there were some missing then, because all my privacy is gone. And they said, we'll make a note of it. So 2 years later, they've done nothing, and they've actually subtracted more hedges from said patio. So I said to myself, all right, Roxy, we're going to finish the fence because now we have a dog. We kind of need some more security, and we need, apparently now, privacy on the other side of our fence because everyone and their bums can just walk by and see into our house.
Well, you're a very popular person, so
yes, this is very true. People want to look in. They want to see our dog.
Into the Sievertson life.
Yeah, that's true. It's very true.
Lifestyle.
And so I started putting together the remaining bits of my fence, and all of this was approved by the Strata. They said you can have a fence because obviously you need privacy so long as it's on the inside of your property and not on the garden part. And as I'm putting together the rest of my fence, like the other back half, all I have to do is hammer out one thing, like pull off one of the boards of this piece of wood. As I'm doing that, the Strata manager comes down and he chews me out. It's like unheard of that I'd be making noise with a hammer at 1 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon.
Jesus.
He comes down to chew me out and be like, you don't have approval to do this. And I said, I absolutely do. I have it in writing with you that I can have a fence in this property, and I am finishing it today because you guys have cut down the rest of my hedges. This is all about above board. It's all been taken care of. I've done my part. You and the Strata haven't done fuck all. And so he gets all mad and he says, well, you've ruined my nap, and I just wanted to see what the noise was all about.
You've ruined my nap. Oh,
I was using a hammer, folks, for like 5.5 minutes on a fucking Thursday afternoon at 1 o'clock. Now, my fucking neighbor has been drilling tiles, sawing tiles from 8 a.m. until 7:30 at night for 4 fucking nights straight. And that's okay, apparently.
Well, you see, the reason why that's okay is because that didn't interrupt your Strata manager's nap, because his nap is clearly earlier in the day. That's where you went wrong. That's where
it's grotesquely inconsiderate to what my poor neighbor above me is probably going through.
Yeah.
And what I was going through. I mean, not me. I fortunately was at work most of the day.
Yeah.
But poor Roxy, who's been sick this entire week, had to listen to it the entire time.
God.
And then the one time I was home and we were going to record, which was Monday, of course I get home, I have a screaming headache. I'm like, okay, I just want to record and get this over with.
Yeah.
And naturally there's just every 5 seconds until 7:30. I was like,
good Lord.
Fuck me.
Yeah.
Fuck me. So that's why There wasn't a Monday episode, everybody, but we're here now.
Yeah, we're here on a Saturday. Because we love you guys so much. That's why.
I mean, we don't, but we just wanted to do a live show.
We like you guys a lot.
We wanted some quality, and this is the only weekend that works because next weekend I've got a wedding to go to, and then the weekend after that I have a birthday party to go to, and then the weekend after that I think there's another birthday party to go to. So weekends are busy.
Mr. Popular over here.
Mr. Too much to do, and so. Here we are to talk some playoffs and Canucks, so why don't we get straight into it?
Yeah.
Obviously, right off the hop, the biggest Canucks news, which you probably want to hear about, which is the return of head coach Bruce Boudreau. There was, I don't want to call it like an issue, public issue or whatever, but it seemed like some media types were trying to make this like mountain out of a molehill where they were like, ooh, there's issues between the team and the coach, and there's a disconnect, and it was just kind of like, guys, who cares? He has the option to back out, and he has till June 1st. Like, trying to play this up like it's a major issue is a bit much.
Yeah. And I think some people were also some fans were also kind of making it this thing of like, oh, it's a PR nightmare if they lose him. It's like, well, no, they signed both parties signed the contract knowing that one could walk away. Mm-hmm. Like, one could decide not to go along with it. Or I guess technically the Canucks couldn't necessarily, they could fire him if they wanted to, but
it was technically not even a firing. It was like you said, both teams had the option to walk away from the deal.
Yeah.
If Boudreau walked away because he had a longer contract, he was allowed to, and the Canucks were also be like, okay, we don't want to renew your services because Jim Rutherford and Patrick Allvin want their own guy. Here's a cash settlement to be like, thanks for your efforts in one season, but it's just not a fit right now. Which is totally fine. Especially especially with the Canucks history with coaches where they've had to fire a lot lately, and there is a lot of guys that the Francesco Aquilini's still paying for, or like Travis Green, he's obviously paying for right now, and other guys, and even in the past like Willie Desjardins, John Tortorella, guys, and plus the GM they just fired. If you get an opportunity to walk away without that kind of a bill on your hands and you want to look elsewhere, you should, by all means. There's no issue with going and looking at what's out there, right? Yeah.
But if Boudreau wants to come back, that's fine too. I liked when Rutherford was talking about we're not going to give him a long-term extension right now because we only got the sample size we did, which and a lot of people got very upset about that, and I was looking at that no, that's smart. That's a correct way to look at it right now, I would say, more than anything, especially considering there were some things that there were some ways that Boudreau was managing the team down the stretch that I didn't love. Mm-hmm. I was like, okay, I don't necessarily see I don't necessarily see a situation where you have to lock him down right now, right? And I guess the rest of the league didn't either.
Yeah, I mean, there was no there was a good process decision here where it was publicly Rutherford and Allvin came out. I think it was Allvin that came out and said, we didn't like a lot of the team structure. We were just getting bailed out by goalies. And so I think a lot of people were like, oh, well, Boudreau's not going to like that because he's not really a structure coach. He's a player's coach. He just kind of gets the best out of guys through being who he is. He's not necessarily a,
X's and O's guy.
X's and O's kind of guy like Travis Green was, right? And so I understand if they were trying to hammer that in before Boudreau made his decision where they're like, look, we really need structure in this organization. So I kind of wonder if by deciding to bring Boudreau back or him opting to return and the team agreeing, I wonder how much that means or how much that indicates what their off-season plans are. Maybe they looked at their current cap situation, the contracts they have, and they said, look, we want to play structured hockey, but with the contracts we have, the likelihood of us being able to shed them to get better players in to play a structured hockey isn't actually going to be possible. So we're just going to have to bite the bullet and have another year with Boudreau where we play unstructured, but we play fun hockey and we get an extra year to try and, basically unfuck the mess left behind by the previous GM and regime.
Yeah, and I mean there's already Elliot Friedman talking about how they're looking at trying to move OEL, which is tough because again, he did better than I think you and I both expected this season, right?
For sure.
But at the end of the day, it still doesn't justify that $7 million cap hit, right?
Oh yeah, at the end of the day, he can play well and be a great number 3 on your D pair. But at the end of the day, he's playing behind Quinn Hughes, and at the end of the day, he's making $7.26 million to not be a number 3. If you're getting paid that much, you might as well be Quinn Hughes, but he's not Quinn Hughes.
Yeah. I feel bad for him because of how high the expectations are on him and it does, like we say all the time, it comes down to just the number, and it's not your job to say no to it as a player. But and again, like if OEL were on a contract where he was only making, say, like $3 million a year, maybe a little bit like around that mark, you're fine with it. Like you're like, that seems reasonable more or less for what he brings, especially. But like combine like his issues with scoring for a large part of this year, like you're like, oh, that's not really enough. So if you're Vancouver and you can find a buyer, a taker for him, you should go ahead and do it. You should go and try and make that deal work, even if that maybe costs you a little bit of I don't know, draft picks or
like asset capital, basically. Yeah. But yeah, I think based on what Alvin and Rutherford have said, it doesn't really sound like they agree they have enough asset capital to begin with.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, that's where I think like maybe they said, look, we're not going to be able to move Myers, OEL, what's his name, Tanner Pearson, Jason Dickinson. Like there's a lot of money tied up that we're going to struggle to move without giving up assets.
Yeah.
So maybe we just stick with Boudreau and try and rebuild his value so we can flip him at the deadline or something.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, the only GM who probably would trade for OEL right now was just fired.
You think so? You think there's no team that would take him?
Like, I mean,
for at a reasonable price.
Here's the thing: the GM that wanted him the most paid the 9th overall pick for him. That guy got fired this season.
Yeah, you're not getting that,
and you're not getting that back. And the other GM who would probably trade for him just fired his right-hand man because of the deal they made for Travis Hamonic.
That's right.
So,
oh man, Pierre Maguire.
Can you believe it?
I can because one of the Russians in front of the net. Jesus.
That's my whole thing is that to convince a GM to take on $7.26 million, like maybe Rutherford and Alvin could pull it off because they pulled off the Hamonic deal. So that's why like half of my brain says like, you can't say no that these deals can't happen. But the other part, if you looks at the cap hit and the player and what he's bringing in, you're like who in their right mind would take this deal now?
Yeah. I was thinking literally it might just be Arizona again. It's just you
just keep flipping shit to Arizona as a laundromat.
Well, yeah, because they need something to put in that 2,000 seat college arena next year, and it might as well be OEL again. Because I'm just trying to think of any team that would necessarily be in need of a defenseman of that kind of not so much about the his capabilities so much as the name recognition kind of thing. If you're trying to sell tickets or something, you could maybe still get away with that with Oliver Ekman-Larsson to a degree,
right?
But again, at the same time, he has a no move clause, which as of now you cannot, because I didn't realize this when we talked about it last year, but I guess this is I don't know if it's this year or the season before where they instituted the rule that once you give a no move clause, even if it's traded, it comes with him regardless. You can't decide whether or not to honor it. So he's got that regardless, right? So he can veto any move he wants. And last time, the only two teams he was willing to move to were Vancouver and Boston.
Vancouver, yeah.
And I don't think Boston is in the market anymore.
No, because they signed Hampus Lindholm to, what was it, a $7 million contract or something
a somewhat equally weird contract where you're like, oh, that's a bit hefty.
Well, Hampus Lindholm, oh my God, that's insane. It's a $6.5 million cap hit until 2029, 2030.
No.
Yeah.
2030?
Yeah, bro.
I'll
be 40 by the time that thing expires.
Good Lord. That is, that's ugly. I'll be 30.
8 years.
I'll be 32. That's Jesus Christ. So, I don't want to think about that down the road. Move along.
And if you look at Boston's cap hits too, it's McAvoy has a $9.5 million cap or extension kicking in next year that also goes until 2029-30. Brandon Carlo's on a $4.1 million deal until 2026, 2027.
Really? Is Brandon Carlo that, like...
I guess he's that important to them.
Irreplaceable?
Yeah. Matt Grzelcyk, 3.6 until 23-24.
Jeez, I didn't...
Derek Forbort, $3 million until 23-24. Mike Riley, 23-24 for $3 million. So it's like...
I didn't realize they were that locked into so many weird contracts. Jeez.
Well, like, especially on their defense. So it's like that $6.5 million for Hampus Lindholm was clearly like, well, we were willing to pay for a left shot defenseman who's like at the like close to 30 to be on our left side, and that could have been OEL, but they didn't get him, so they went with Anaheim, and I think they paid a pretty good premium to get
the Ducks. I think the Ducks made out like a bandit in that deal. Like they got a lot. They got a lot back for him. And God, like I'm just like thinking about like Boston. I mean, it makes sense to Boston in a way because they are a lot closer to competitive. They've got a core of like Marchand, Bergeron, and McAvoy. That's like a little bit on the older side. Well, McAvoy's a young guy, but like. Their core group is a little bit aging now.
They're in that kind of like mindset of like, so long as we had Brad Marchand and like Taylor Hall or whatever on their current deals and David Pastrnak, like so long as we have those guys, we're always going to be competing. Like kind of like
they're the Sharks from a couple years ago when they still had Marleau and Thornton kind of in their swan song.
Yeah, they're basically the Pittsburgh Penguins without the back-to-back cups, where they're like, so long as we have X players, we are always going to be competing. Right. Like we're not going to be trying to tank intentionally. Like we just can't. Yeah. So yeah, that's a bit concerning if you're a fan of hoping OEL was going to expand his, number of teams he'd be traded to, because he's not going to want to go back to Arizona now knowing they're playing at a 5,000 person arena or 4,000 person arena. Like that sucks. So like there isn't that many teams with cap who are like in the active tank. I wonder if he'd be willing to go to like, this is kind of a weird fit, but like I wonder if like Seattle would be a fit, because they kind of need, because after like last year, the defense was already not fantastic as is. They just traded Giordano back to Toronto. So they're clearly a little, who was their first captain, which God, that's a bit of a bummer. A little awkward. But like they're a team that actually could maybe use like the veteran leadership aspect as well and everything. It's a bit of a wonky fit there, but especially because they only have I think like 7.8 in cap space going into next year or something, or they might have more. I think they have a bit more, but like. So maybe there's your pick, especially because you can sell them on like, well, you're not moving that far down the road. We're not like sending you to the middle of nowhere. We're sending you literally just 3 hours down the I-5. Like you could maybe get away with that. It's just a matter of, and they have picks to maybe like move back to you if they're willing to. But like you might be able to sell them on that. But like, what's it going to cost you extra to move that deal? Right, is the big question. What is Seattle going to want? Yeah, and Seattle's also, I mean, based on what they did at the deadline, they might be in the mode of like, look, we're clearly not in contention, so like we should be like taking on bad contracts or something in exchange for like we'll take your second round pick for taking X players. But man, like that cap hit is just insane. It's so insane. It's just like you have to do some insane mental gymnastics to justify a guy that expires like 5 years down the road and he's 30 years old. Yeah. Like that's a big ask. And that's why like I tweeted out like, I don't know, a couple months ago or whenever it was, when I like just did the math for the public and said, look, they traded the 9th overall for like a $44 million cap commitment so they could get away from like a $9 million cap commitment for a year. Like that's how all in they were. That's how to save their jobs. And it didn't amount to anything. It amounted to Connor Garland being really, really good, but that's it. That's really it. Yeah, but even then, Connor Garland now costs you $4.95 million to not make the playoffs. Yeah, and that's not his fault, but it's the team itself. The team, again, the original regime considered themselves a lot better than they were, and it cost them. And like a lot of people go, oh well, they're they clearly proved down the stretch that they can be a playoff caliber team, and it's like. That might be true but also you have to consider the fact that after they fired the GM and the coach, suddenly a huge weight is lifted off your shoulders of what's going to happen to this organization in the next, that
constant shadow is now gone.
Yeah.
Suddenly, you know where at least you have an idea of what your direction is.
Yeah.
Which they didn't before, and it must have also sucked playing in front of a crowd that you could tell was actively rooting for your demise. Like, that sucks. Like, that's gotta suck as a player. And then all of a sudden you're playing in front of a crowd that absolutely adores you, and like literally just because they changed the coach and the GM, all of a sudden you've got the Bruce There It Is chant literally every single night. Like, that's a way easier like situation to play in front of as a player. Like, that's so much, and it's so much more fun to come to the rink again when you're dealing with that, right?
Have you considered though 4,000 drunk Arizona State University kids at a hockey game? Now that's an
environment you want to be in front of. Apparently, so I think Antoine Roussel said he wanted to stay in Arizona, which, like, hey, good for him.
Of course he does. His contract's expiring. Of course he's like, yeah, I want to get paid by an organization that's like.
He did. He did okay. Like, he did okay. I think he did okay in Arizona.
I think he had 4 points or something.
Oh, did he really? Oh, is it that bad?
I don't think he did anything.
Oh, poor Antoine. I love Antoine. There's a reason he was a fan favorite. Like, super nice guy, super funny.
Honestly, like, the biggest crime, like, of that whole like 2018 like signing spree where they just like committed millions to vets is that Antoine Roussel blew out his knee.
Yeah.
Like, cause he was basically exactly as advertised, a bit overpaid, but he outperformed his contract, which was rare for that Benning era, was guys outplaying their contract. And he, like, man, if he had another good year where he, you know, his knee is fine, he still builds his chemistry with Adam Gaudette and like insert guy here on the right wing, like that might have actually been enough for them to make the playoffs. You never know, right?
Yeah.
But obviously it didn't work out, which sucks for him.
Yeah.
It also sucks because, like, I think the opportunity cost of, like, by signing Ekman-Larsson and Connor Garland, or acquiring OEL on that deal,
right,
and then signing Garland to his $4.95 million deal, it actually resulted in a cap hit that was more than Roussel, Beagle, and Eriksson combined.
Oh, by a country mile, yeah.
So just by doing that alone, they actually made it so that Elias Pettersson couldn't get a long-term deal.
Yeah.
And so on the note of outplaying their contract, he was playing like a $12 million player.
Yeah,
down the stretch.
There was one point, I forget if you were, this might have even been before you joined the show, but I remember talking about how one of my big hot takes for a while was that I honestly thought Elias Pettersson was going to end up with a contract that paid him more than Connor McDavid. Mm-hmm. Not because he's necessarily better than Connor McDavid, but simply because he might have been able to argue that his value, because they didn't have a Leon Draisaitl play on the Canucks at the time, that he could argue that he is more valuable to the Canucks than Connor McDavid was to the Oilers.
Sure.
Which is still a stretch, but it's one of those things where he very well could have argued that, and the Canucks really should have gone to PD at the time, been like, here's a blank check. You can have whatever you want.
You sign it so long as the years on it equals 10.
As long as the max years on it, you can have as much money as you want, like, very easily. But again, like, that was the problem with the original regime as well, which I don't want to spend too much time talking about, but like, they very much were like, we're going to give veterans as much as they want, and we're going to make the young guys our actual future. We're going to haggle with them hard on those numbers, which is, like, I get that you don't want to be, say, like Toronto, where they're giving Mitch Marner, $9 million a year? They're giving him, like...
he's like 11, isn't it?
It might be 11. They're giving John Tavares 11.
They have, like, 3 guys combined for, like, $35 million.
Oh, it's not good. Like, William Nylander's contract might, like... Well, Matthews' contract is obviously the best one, but...
Nylander's a great
Nylander
contract.
Arguably deserved more, like,
at that time, sure.
At that time, and he's arguably the better player.
And he
Marner.
held out, and everyone hates him in the playoffs for it now.
Yeah, I mean, everyone hated Marner for a while in Toronto too. Like, even though he was like the Toronto boy, like,
I think they actually hated his dad more because they were like,
his dad's.
I've
heard his dad's not
driving
fantastic.
This or whatever. Yeah,
yeah, I've heard his dad's not fantastic.
But yeah, like, you'd be, I mean, for Leafs fans that listen to this, like, you'd way rather be happy that you're paying your actual stars $10.9 million over
Yeah.
Louis Eriksson, $6 million to sit in the press box.
Like they love we'll talk about Toronto a lot more in a bit here, but like they love Jason Spezza in Toronto, but they wouldn't love him if he was making $5 million a year for like 3 years. You wouldn't love him as much then.
Yeah.
It's because he's the cheap veteran guy who's been there a bunch of times before that that's why you can enjoy what he brings to the table, right?
Yeah, it's kind of the inverse, right? Because they do have their stars and their elite players being paid money.
Yeah.
And everyone in the bottom half of the lineup is getting paid league minimum or less, right? Or sorry, like $1.5 million or league minimum. Like they're getting paid peanuts to perform, and when they outperform, it's great. And you're happy with, Pierre Engvall being a 23-point guy in a 68-game season because like he's not getting paid anything and he's still producing. When William Nylander goes 2 games without producing, then you're like, he's $7 million. Why isn't he doing anything? Yeah, right. Whereas the Canucks have been the inverse for so long, where it's like the stars have been outperforming their contracts at all times, and the guys that they signed to big money deals to, for some reason, provide some kind of fantasy depth or whatever, always underperform their deals. Whether that's Tyler Myers, OEL, the list has gone on for years.
Yeah, it's been rough, and that's why it's nice to see that they're kind of looking to clear it out a little bit, and that they're more and again, I gave Jim Benning credit during this last offseason in the way that he handled the actual depth stuff, because they actually did an okay job of actually going, well, we have this team in Abbotsford now, we're going to spend on a lot to bring in a lot of cheap depth, which they should have been doing the whole time.
Been doing the entire time.
And and some of those guys actually played and performed, like Sheldon Dries.
They performed exactly like an AHL depth feeder system should perform.
100%.
Which they'd never done before. Like I didn't really tweet about this, but like I was thinking like back to previous years, and like for the last 4 years or whatever it's been since they got rid of Pat Conacher as their director of the AHL franchise, their typical MO was sign one depth center to play in your AHL team and 1 or 2 wingers. And so for the previous 4 years, it was like, okay, Reed Boucher and Justin Bailey, those are our guys. And the center was either
Reed Boucher,
Tanner Kero, or
Tanner Kero.
And Tanner Kero played 40 games for Dallas this year.
Yeah, he was weirdly good.
He was fine. He's an actual NHL set 13th forward.
Didn't they acquire him for somebody? Didn't they trade someone to get him? I think they did something weird where it wasn't even a free agent guy. It was they picked him up at the deadline or something.
They traded him something for him.
It wasn't something
rando,
it wasn't something big.
It didn't matter, but it was just you went out of your way to get him.
Yeah, and then just let him go.
But yeah, for that 1 year at least, it was okay, we have 1 depth center and 2 depth wingers, and that's it. And because of that, you had players who shouldn't be in the NHL playing in the NHL, like Adam Gaudette, because they had nothing else.
Or guys who would get who they clearly didn't trust to be in the NHL in the first place, but they had to because they had nobody left. Where it'd be okay, Brogan Rafferty for 2 games, and it's I don't think
we don't want to lose him on waivers, so he's just gonna sit here the entire time.
What 1 game of Philip Holm before they traded him to the Knights, which actually was which was a correct call at the end of the day, but it was one of those things where it was it's okay, you kind of need guys who can come up more regularly than that and play for you, play minutes. It
was such a an absent thought and such an afterthought of a they did not consider the AHL important to their overall process, which was such a downfall. And that's why for my piece with Canucks Army, I talked about Trent Cull's comments on the radio where he basically sewered the previous regime's process.
Let's talk about that, because they're coming off they got swept in that.
They got swept.
I felt so bad for you. I was
I thought it was really funny because I think I messaged you when you were like, "Oh, congrats, buddy." I was like, "Oh, it's not gonna last." Don't worry.
You sure
I was
did.
I've signed. I'm recapping games. It's gonna last 2, and that's it.
Yeah, God.
And sure enough, they get
swept.
bounced in very embarrassing fashion.
And to be I will give the Abbotsford a little bit of credit here. I'm sure you will tell me why I'm wrong here, but I will say the AHL playoff system is so weird. It is much easier in a 3-game series to get screwed on a wonky on like a rough night, or like one rough night or two rough nights or whatever in that system, then it would be, say, if they had played a best of 7, they might have been able to, especially when all 3 games are in middle of nowhere Bakersfield. Like
middle of nowhere, they're a back-to-back too. Like
even had they tied the series, they would have waited 4 days to play the next game, sitting in a hotel in the middle. Again, like literally, they're living at a hotel for a week. Like it's so weird that they would do that system, and I don't know how it saves any sort of money or like any sort of time to do it that way. Like, especially like 4-day layoff, just send them both to Abbotsford for like 1 game. Good Lord. It's such a dumb setup.
It was clearly just like we need to cut costs on travel, so let's just like back-to-back them. So it's like if it's over, it's over quick at least, and we're not costing teams money to sit somewhere.
So dumb.
Whatever. It's a weird league. They did not look good, but it was very like obviously the storylines coming out of the series was, why is Jet Wu playing as a forward?
God.
Why is Danila Klimovich being scratched?
Jeez,
And while like Trent Cull kind of answered like, you know, why Jet Wu was a forward to begin with, like there's a lot to take in from that, because it's like if he's playing as a forward at all, it means you don't trust him to be a defenseman, and as a 22-year-old, that basically means your NHL options are probably like in the toilet. For Klimovich, I didn't disagree. Like
really,
I didn't disagree with the call at all, because I didn't think he played well down the stretch, and I think he was a defensive liability. He doesn't move his feet enough, and if you're looking to win an opening round to get home games in Abbotsford, I completely understand why you'd be like, we can't like risk it with a kid who's played poorly down the stretch, doesn't compete the way we need him to compete, and we're trying to win. Like, I'm fine with that. I'm not fine with the process of replacing him with a fucking defenseman and in his role. That's what doesn't make sense. If it was like Tristan Nielsen, who played great this season in really spotty action, like former Vancouver Giant, if they had played him on the 4th line instead of Jet Wu and Danila Klimovich, I'd be like, I understand the process, because it's like Jet Wu didn't impress as a defenseman or a forward, so he's out. Totally fine. Klimovich, can't trust him. Can't even play PK or power play lately because he's just too hot-headed to like, you know, play properly. So you put Tristan Nielsen in, who's been fine on both ends of the ice. He can score. He had a hat trick early in this year. You can trust him to play, so it makes sense. But then you get into the question where they asked him like, oh, like what's the deal with development? Because, you know, Klimovich isn't playing, Jet Wu isn't playing, like what's going on? And he just goes on. This is Trent Cull I'm talking about. Goes on this big, like, giant tangent about how the previous regime's process made no sense. They rushed guys into the NHL and then came loaded. So
this was bonkers. I've never seen this before. This is wild.
This was fucking nuts, because any coach's interview is never, ever exciting. A coach's interview is so boring. They basically just rattle off a bunch of cliches, talking about how they're proud of their team, how they think they put in good work, got pucks in deep. They played, you know, X system really well, whatever, did a lot of growth, didn't do a lot of growth, had things to work on, whatever. It's very rare you have a coach come in with 2 examples of where the previous regime failed the AHL development program, especially one that happened back in 2018. So the first one he rattled off was how Gaudette was rushed to the system, and how under things being done the proper way, the right way, is how he quoted it, that Adam Gaudette would have spent 2 seasons in the AHL working tons of minutes, establishing himself as a number 1 center, playing all areas, PK, power play, 5v5, whatever, and then been ready for an actual NHL job instead of what happened. And sure, you can argue and be like, well, you know, Gaudette was never going to pan out more than what he is right now, and that's fine. But the fact that you come out critiquing this one player who was traded for an active NHL player for the Canucks,
your team,
with Matthew Highmore
organizational roster,
and then he referred to Darren Archibald, and he again, when it comes to process, and he said, you know, when Vasily Podkolzin got sent down for the playoffs. That's the first time in my 5 years that they've done that. And this is the right way to do things because back in 2017-18, the organization didn't send Darren Archibald down for playoffs because they were scared of losing him on waivers. And that's a very fucking specific and inside baseball reference to give on a public radio interview about like a development program that's been openly shit on for the last several years by the public and media.
He knows this market well.
He knows it enough where he knows he probably I'm sure someone said to him, like, why the fuck would you say that? But I'm sure a lot of this was coming from conversations he had with Ryan Johnson where someone probably said to them, like, hey, everyone's, like, really shitting on your guys' development program. And these two are under the gun, too. Like, Alvin and Rutherford have said, like, there are guys moving forward. But at the end of the day...
Trent Cull has taken a lot of arrows. Like...
For sure.
Yeah.
And, like, deservedly so. Like, I think there's still some... Like, there's some... Like, in my article I wrote, like, there's still a lot of smoke coming from the AHL franchise because, you know, no European skaters have developed. No defensemen have developed. There's been... questions about Artur Silov's deployment because he played like 5 games last year and only 10 this year before he went 2 months without starts. And so there's still a lot of like, okay, Trent Cull, what are you doing to actually develop? Like, why should I trust you to develop Adam Gaudette over 2 seasons? And then you kind of wonder like, all right, Ryan Johnson and him have conversations all the time. Did they have an end of season conversation where they said, oh man, you know what? With Alvin and Rutherford behind the wheel, it feels like we're actually being taken care of or paid attention to. We're no longer an afterthought. That last regime really kind of screwed us. Remember when Darren Archibald couldn't get sent on waivers? Because, like, I don't know about you. I don't just recall things that happened 5 years ago off the top of my head when I have a bone to pick about a present issue.
Yeah.
Like, that's a festering thing that would only be brought up if you had talked about it recently.
It's a thing that's literally eaten at you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, like, per my article, I said, like, yeah, there's a lot of smoke. There's still probably a fire there when it comes to Trent Cull, and maybe he's not the guy.
Mm-hmm.
But you need to give him and Ryan Johnson some benefit of the doubt because the guys that were in charge of them have been guys that we have been shitting on for years for their mismanagement of an NHL roster. So it's not unfair to draw the line and say, well, if they couldn't manage an NHL roster properly, why have we been giving them
a second
why have
team
we been
to
giving
ruin?
2 other people the like shit for their handling of the AHL roster when technically they're getting directions from Jim Benning and John Weisbrod. They're doing as much as they can with what they've been given, and clearly with the Tanner Caro example or the Reed Boucher and Justin Bailey example, they've been given nothing to work with. I can't remember if I messaged you about this. I was actually on the Ryan Johnson media availability, but I wasn't allowed to ask a question because I'm assuming they didn't know who I was.
Okay.
But I was invited with the Zoom link or whatever.
Okay.
And so I had my question lined up, and it was basically a praise of Ryan Johnson. So I'm disappointed they didn't call me because I had my stats lined up. It was basically the depth production that they had gotten out of like ECHL players. Because before, Ryan Johnson spoke about this. So another example of current management sewering the previous regime. Ryan Johnson said that when they used to call up guys to Utica, it was basically who can drive here the fastest. And that was shocking, again, because it's like, this is all inside baseball. You don't talk about like your process the way that Trent Cull and Ryan Johnson have done over their media availabilities. And so I put up like the math, and it was like in 27-18, the team had signed something like 25 players from the ECHL on ATOs or PTOs, and they produced something like 15 points altogether. The next year, it was only like 5 guys, and they produced like 10 points. And then this year, they signed like 15 guys, and they provided like 45 points or something. And so it's like they clearly were given the rope to actually get guys who could play hockey and produce at the AHL level and actually be useful contributors. Whereas before, it was just like, hey, get guys into the Utica system who can drive here as soon as possible. We don't care if they're complete dog shit.
God.
That was going to be my question was having Abbotsford locally and a different management group a boon or a boost to your ability to round out your team with better depth because of X point productions by your depth call-up guys? And I didn't get to ask that question, which is very disappointing.
Because now I'm literally right now trying to Google when did they sign Yoshiro Hirano? Was that before or after Jim Benning was gone?
He came, I believe. Oh, you know what? It was definitely during the Alvin era. You know why? Because he came in January.
That's right, January 5th.
When the team was going through a massive COVID outbreak. And that's like literally exactly when Jim Rutherford took over, because I remember him being like, we're dealing with a lot of injuries and a COVID outbreak down in Abbotsford right now. And he wasn't even in town yet. Yeah. So very convenient. A new management comes in, and all the AHL depth that they acquire are all actual contributors and good players.
Hirano was the big one from this year, right? Where they picked him up from the Cincinnati Cyclones, and he just goes off and
pops off so well. He gets a fucking top 6 role, then bounces to the Worlds, puts up like 9 points in 3 games or whatever.
I hope he comes back. I want to see him in person.
Me too.
I hope he comes. I'm sure they wouldn't be against it at this point, considering what a great job he did.
It's kind of like a case of like, you always get those guys in your system too, where like they're clear fan favorites regardless of their skill, that you just kind of you just keep around because they're good for your group or whatever.
And at the AHL level, you might as well.
Yeah, like
if they're producing
AHL contracts can be as low as like $50,000 if you want to.
If as long as they're not clearly like dragging you down in the wins column, like who cares? Go for it.
And if you have enough depth that you can only play him 30 games and he doesn't care, then you're not losing by having him on your roster. Like Vincent Arsenault, for example, is basically just a headhunter, like goon at the AHL level, but the organization loves him because he has incredible work ethic and like still produces for like a big just lumbering goon. Like he had like 6 goals this year on like 40 games played or whatever, and they love him because he's like a very lovable guy, because he's just like a complete throwback player. Like I love him. I'm always rooting for Big Vinny. Like, why not? So, like, Yoshiro Hirano, he's got the Japanese roots. Like, he basically had a fan base the second they signed him.
Yeah.
Why not?
Bring him back. I would love to see him back. Yeah, if they're gonna, especially if like that's the way they're going with things now. I'd love to ask now that there's new management. I would love to ask Trent Cull about Jonathan Dahlen, because that's the other big lingering one that really got away from them.
Yeah.
And again, like that, there's like Trent Cull is not a perfect coach by any stretch. Like has his own like ways that he's done things that you and I've both had lots of like questions about,
for our audience too. We also know some things about certain prospects developments in the AHL, like that is like literally under lock and key by like player agents. So like we also have like stuff that we can't say.
Not to brag or nothing. We definitely have a few things. We definitely know some extra stuff than say the average person on that thing. But it's like, and it comes down to like, there are cases where it's like, Danila Klimovich not playing in a playoff game makes some sense, but even then, like, part of me is like
who cares?
Like, part of me is like, who cares? He's still like, isn't it better for his long-term development to play him in a playoff game, regardless of whether or not you think you're trying to like win it? Like, isn't that still more important at the end of the day?
Well, I made that point on Sportsnet 650 with Faber and Quads' Canucks warm-up. Like, the San Diego Gulls, the Anaheim's affiliate, signed like some 20-year-old kid, Olin Zellweger, and they just threw him in the playoffs, even though he'd never played a single game of pro. Yeah. It's like they were fighting for a spot. They needed to win their final game. They were in the same position as Abbotsford, where they had lost the first game, needed to win the second to have home playoff dates. And they put him in. Even though the stakes were so high, they didn't give a shit. They just wanted to see what he could do. Yeah. And that's kind of the logic you need to have moving forward, is just get the guys to play. On the Jonathan Dahlen thing, it's weird to say 1 minute like, hey, Adam Gaudette should play 2 seasons with us, and then Jonathan Dahlen comes out and publicly, or not publicly, but he complains somewhere that like, the communication's bad, and like I don't quite know what the team wants, and the organization immediately sells on him and says this guy we put in enough time with this guy.
He demanded a trade. Like,
but again, that's Jim Benning, John Weisbrod.
Yeah, again, that's a whole
They
other
heard through the
game.
grapevine that the guy was having problems, and instead of just
trying to figure it out,
they just
booted him.
I mean, I think back then too, Trent Cull actually came out and be like, we did our best with Jonathan. He's a good player. He knows he's not ready, but like he didn't demand a trade or was like,
Trent
Cull was very reasonable about it.
Was like on his side about it. Like,
yeah,
to
and
a degree.
so was Dahlin too. Like Dahlin too was like.
It wasn't Dahlin was.
He wasn't like Trent Cull's like a piece of shit, and like that's why I wanted out. He was like, I just didn't have there was a misunderstanding between the two of us. I didn't ask for a trade, and Trent Cull agreed. The only person that didn't agree was Jim Benning.
Yeah, he didn't he wasn't sewering Trent Cull over it or anything. Yeah. Like it wasn't like that, but like there was definitely like a disconnect. But it wasn't like he didn't sound like it was like irreparable damage that had been done.
Jim Benning treated it that way. And we'll hope that whoever they, now that we have a new regime in charge and everything, hopefully with whoever they draft with that, what is it, the 15th overall pick they're getting now? 15th overall, baby.
They'll that player will turn out. Who now? Faber and Quads had somebody on the show the other day. Marco Kasper. That's the guy who I think a lot of people want.
Another guy from Regla BK, which makes sense because I believe.
I think he is slated to go in around that spot.
Yeah, he's expected to go in the 14 to 18 range. So it makes sense why Faber would pick them as his guy because he's got the Hoglander ties back to Regla. He knows the coaching staff, so it's like of course Casper's Faber's guy. So I'm a big fan of that.
And I think correct me if I'm wrong, because I actually heard that somebody threw that name into the Twitter chat or into the Twitch chat the other day when I was live reacting to the lottery that it's Marco Kasper season, and I'm like, oh, here we go, and because he's a Austrian kid, it doesn't look like he played. He had 11 points in the SHL, like in 46 games, not a world beater, but like played pretty well and
but 6 points in the playoffs as an 18-year-old is pretty damn good.
That is pretty good.
As a kid that just turned 18 too. He did it like the beginning of April, so it's like there's reason to believe like he could actually be like a good sleeper pick at like 15th overall.
Rookie kid playing in the SHL, which is a pro league, which is a men's pro league, not junior. Like that carries weight on its own. Like Pettersson was the same way to a degree.
Don't you care? Like this is a complete tangent. It has nothing to do with what we're going to get into because we want to get into the actual like NHL news. But you know how awesome it would be if the NHL adopted like a Swedish elite league kind of system where you have like Vancouver Canucks major and then AHL is Vancouver Canucks and then there's like a U18 team, a U17 team, U16, like all the way down. Like
that would be
that would just be so much better for development because it's like here's a kid that they scouted when they're 12 or something. Like just abandon the draft entirely and it becomes like recruitment like at like the really young ages and you really separate then who are the actual good franchises and who's skating by just because they exist as a franchise.
Yeah. Though I would love that. I would love that as an idea. I think the only like wrench in that system for at least specifically this is a North America problem rather than like there's a reason it works in Europe versus here is all of a sudden like the Toronto Maple Leafs would never have a player, would have every second like generational talent because Ontario is where every like player goes to like the GTHL is like the big that big development league that like Connor McDavid played in and he was teammates I think with like I want to say like Wayne Simmons or not somebody was like his teammate in like 12 years old who's also like in the NHL like a major NHL. It might have been Dylan Strome, but like there were like every second great NHL player comes out of that league, and it's like, oh, like, well, Toronto and Ottawa would never lose a thing.
It would basically like kind of it would torch the OHL, the WHL, and the Q.
Completely
like it would completely overhaul
the
CHL. It would overhaul the U.S. National system, the USHL,
which are like especially like the CHL in particular has its own issues that need to be dealt with, but. Oh, that would suck for like some small towns that like really love their like junior hockey teams and really care about them.
You would screw over like the Rebel Stokes and the
the
Prince George Cougars and you'd be really screwing minor hockey, but at the same time, there's nothing to say like the Vancouver Canucks have development affiliations with Prince George, with Victoria Royals, with all of like 7 teams or something. Like it's split across the map.
And there's no reason that the Canucks couldn't sponsor or like take over management, I don't think, of a like the hockey program, of like a minor hockey program that's already in their area. Because the way that in Canada, at least, like it depends on where you live, I guess. But like in Vancouver, at the very least, in Greater Vancouver, who you play for is determined exclusively on like what your address is. Mm-hmm. So you can't like shop around to other teams, because otherwise one team would always be like stacked.
Yeah, it's the Mighty Ducks problem. It's where Adam Banks, it's the famously
District 12.
District 12. He didn't have a chance. He could have been like a Hawk, but because of new district rules, he had to become a shitty Mighty Duck with like the dumpster trash garbage team.
Exactly. Like, and in California it's different, right? Or at least in Northern California it's different, where you can shop around and go to teams, which is why a lot of teams are like missing like certain age group teams, because they just,
like Anaheim has a U16, a U14 team, and then but they don't have like a U15.
And that's the kicker. Like, and that's the key thing there, is like, I don't see why the Canucks couldn't go, okay, we're gonna take, which I believe would have been my minor hockey team when I was a kid, which was I think they're called the Vancouver Spirit now. Like they were kind of called that near the end, but like the Vancouver Minor Hockey Association, the one that's not the Thunderbirds. I don't think there's any reason why they couldn't go and be like, okay, we're gonna take over. This is now the Vancouver Junior Canucks program. Yeah. Because that's where in California, that is where all the kids goes to. If you're really good, in Northern California, if you're really, really good, the only AA, AAA program you can go to is the San Jose Junior Sharks. They're the only ones operating. Right. And then in SoCal, they have a lot more. Yeah. But even then, the big two are the LA Junior Kings, right, and the Anaheim Junior Ducks. Yeah. Like those are the two, like because they have the money, they have the resources, they own.
They actually have funding from an NHL team too.
They own or at least operate basically every rink within like their area. Like Anaheim, I think, has like 7. Like I think they have like 7. I think the Kings have 2. The Sharks have at least 3. Like the Canucks could be there, I think. And maybe that's what ends up happening. They talked about the new practice facility and everything, right, that they're looking to build. Mm-hmm. Maybe they start stashing minor hockey in there as well to fill the schedule a little bit, and that ends up leading towards them going with like a junior Canucks program.
That would be cool. I think Noah Juleson talked about it too when he was like, I can't wait for now that Abbotsford's kind of settled. Like he was talking about how we can't wait to like get involved with minor affiliate programs around the Fraser Valley. So it's like, maybe this is on the docket. That seems like a very Alvin Rutherford thing, to have like the bigger picture of hockey in general, like hockey growth in general, and like for the team. Like they're looking at like bluing the seats, for example. Like there isn't a stone that hasn't been unturned by this this 97-year-old Jim Rutherford in his brief tenure as president of hockey operations. Like he knows the Canucks organization was very outdated and needs a lot of work to become better.
For a guy who traded Tanner Pearson to get Eric Goodbranson, he suddenly seems to have gone back in time a little while here. Like,
have you seen that argument though? Like apparently, like when they traded Goodbranson, like their entire like right side was injured, so it was like it kind of made sense from a necessity point, where it was just like they just needed a guy who could play.
I mean, I guess maybe that that would change some things, and for sure. And but like I'm still just like, really, Eric, there's got to be somebody better you could get for Tanner Pearson.
I'm sure like now
at the time Tanner Pearson was very underrated, but like still.
Well, Tanner Pearson better hope like Tyler Myers sticks around and they don't have like a bunch of injuries on their right side, or else he might be the trade goes out again to replace.
But he's good now. Like he overworked that contract that he got. He actually outplayed it, which was incredible, and he was very good for when he was healthy. Like he was really good.
He's completely expendable, but he played well.
Yeah, and that just comes with the territory of being a 7th or 8th guy. It's just like, well, sometimes if we have to make a tough decision, you're going to be the guy who has to go, versus obviously like a Pud Coulson or a Höglander. Like that's just how it goes sometimes. Yeah. But like you don't hate having him on the team at all. Like as long as you got him, like love it.
Well, on the note of Tanner Pearson possibly being one of those guys that they get moved in the offseason because of his cap hit. Apparently the Canucks were in on Andrei Kuzmenko. Yeah. one of the KHL leading scorers. Bit of a weird profile on him. He didn't get drafted. He was basically like a nobody for like his entire like KHL career, and then last season he kind of was near a point per game, like still not really noticeable, and then now in his final year in the KHL, like his KHL contract expiring, he was above a point per game pace. So a part of me is like, hey, cool, if they're in on this like high scoring Russian winger, like that's great. Maybe he can be like quality depth. But a part of me too is like, this is the NHL version of playing right before hitting UFA, like the Nazem Kadri thing, where suddenly you're performing and producing at a rate you've never done ever in your career, and suddenly you're unreal. The odds of him suddenly translating that to the NHL, I think, are really low. But at the very least, the fact that, you know, there are rumors out there that like the Canucks and like the Oilers, the Canucks are at least in on him as one of their potential fits. Yeah, like that's at least encouraging. Like the new regime like has been able to sway some free agents, which is what they're going to be needing. Like since they don't have a prospect pool, they need to find good players from other avenues. I believe Thomas Strands pointed out like the regime is not really sold on this year's UFA market. They're kind of disappointed with what's available. So that means a guy like Kuzmenko could probably be like immediately in their top 9 just by virtue of there being nothing else they can do to replace what they have or plan going out. Yeah. But anyway,
can you be JT Miller, Andre?
Yeah. Hey,
oh no.
Hey Andre, can you swear whenever you make a mistake so you can be our Russian JT Miller?
That's like the whole interview process is like, okay, what do you say when it's like it's like, okay, what do you say when you accidentally make a bad pass? Shoot.
Gosh,
like
darn it.
Right. What's like the red mark? It's okay. Get the red marker down.
Yeah.
Okay. So, okay. Like Jim Rutherford's like standing over like Patrick Alvin like he's training him. It's like, okay, so you're gonna check the do not hire box right there. Like,
yeah. Not a good fit.
Yeah. Exactly. It's like he's gonna be. I'm just shadowing today. Like yeah. Oh god.
But other than that, that basically covers anything that happened with the NHL Canucks. Let's get into playoff talk because
that's fun.
Playoff talk is actually interesting. I mean, depending on the series, because you know some of the series have kind of been trash. I mean, I don't know about you, but like some of the games to start the series, like I don't really want to watch back and forth blowouts, because when a game's over by the second period or midway through the second, it's like I have no interest in watching this, because the odds of a team coming back from 4 goals or 5 goals is very slim.
Very slim. And
we saw that with Colorado. They wiped Nashville.
Oh,
wasn't even fucking close. Not a series.
I feel really bad for like the Predators like players who, because they showed up. Like it wasn't for a lack of try.
They did their best.
They didn't get dismantled because of a lack of try. It's just that they're not good enough to beat the Colorado Avalanche, which is like a tall order as it was. And then it was a case of literally Yusei Saros getting injured 2 games left in your season.
Yeah.
Him being your clear MVP. And then being like, okay, who do we have left? Oh, David Riddick. Well, goodbye. Like, okay. And sure enough, David Riddick was awful in the one game they gave him. Like, they're like, okay, let's see what you do. Immediately allows 5 goals in the first period. And it's like, oh, okay, well, we're screwed here. Yeah. And to Connor Ingram's credit, he was really, really good for like that first game. And even in the second and fourth, like the third and fourth game, he wasn't particularly fantastic. Mm-hmm. But he's a third string guy coming into a no-win like a zero, like a win-win, a lose-lose situation for him, right? Like where it's like, well, you're probably going to lose the series and it's probably not going to look, if they win, it's probably going to look bad on you. So for him to come into that one game, that game 2, actually get them to overtime on like a 49 save performance or like something like that. Like kudos to you for doing that.
Good job, buddy.
Yeah.
It didn't matter, but good job.
Yeah, I just wrote an article for Canucks Army, actually, not to be like, Mr. How does this affect the Canucks sort of thing, but like considering the Canucks were down to Spencer Martin in the last 3 games, I think the Canucks fully, clearly dodged a bullet by not playing in the playoffs, by not making the playoffs. Like
Spencer Martin would have got fucking destroyed.
And yeah, not because it's Spencer Martin's a bad goalie, simply because he's not Thatcher Demko, which
Just
is
because,
what they would need to do something.
It's not because he's bad. It's just that he's okay and has zero NHL experience. He would have been lit the fuck up.
Yeah, like like you can't go to Spencer Martin and be like, well, we need you to be Thatcher Demko for not only for for potentially 4+ games against the same team. No pressure. Yeah, like that's it wouldn't have been fair to Martin. It wouldn't have really been fair to the players, because it's like, well, we're not gonna do it like oh, we're gonna go get beaten up in 4 games, like take an extra toll on our body that we're already a bunch of us are already like playing a little hurt right now, like to play in this like 4 game just to get absolutely walked. Like now, to be fair, I think they might have done a little better than the Predators would have. Like I think I could have seen the Canucks winning a game.
I don't think they would have, man. I think they would have got fucking tuned.
They
didn't have Quinn Hughes.
Did they not? Was Quinn Hughes injured at the last game? Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, he was injured.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they were.
They're
cooked. They were cooked. Yeah, they would have been cooked. But yeah, like the Canucks didn't need to play extra games. Like this is one of again, this is why it always comes back to the whole like, you really like the make the playoffs, anything can happen thing is such horse shit. Like, not to go back, we already talked about the last regime and everything, but like the whole idea of like that being a real thing that happens is so not true.
Yep.
Like Montreal last year was kind of the closest anyone's ever come to that.
Yeah.
But even then, they got absolutely dismantled by the Lightning in the final. Like, they had no chance. The fact that they won even a game in that series was a miracle.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the point at the end of the day is, like, why make the playoffs if you're not expecting yourself to win the Stanley Cup?
Yeah.
Like, that should be your mantra going into it.
Yeah.
So
if your goal is let's just get there and let's hope luck takes us the rest of the way, like that's not an actual strategy. That's just like
that. And it's just one of those things where it's like it's wishful thinking, and it's you not only do you have to hope that everything goes in your favor, you have to hope that everything goes against the other team, the other 15 teams. In favors.
You're banking on like another team's bounces going way worse than yours, which is like not a strategy.
Yeah, that's not winning. That's winning by proxy. Like it's
nonsense.
Yeah, it's default. Yeah, exactly. Like that's what it is. And no team wins the cup that way. Not a single team that has won the cup in the last 30 years has won it by just kind of magically hoping and getting there. Like the example people always bring up is the Blues, but the Blues were making the playoffs regularly.
They were actually good for years.
Yeah,
like the big fluke in like the Canucks history was that Campoli tried to high flip a puck and he fucked it up and threw it right to Alex Burrows, and they finally got past Chicago. And that was one of the only bounces they got.
Yeah.
The entire playoff run.
And they were a fantastic team.
And they were
the best
team.
They were arguably one of the best teams of the post-lockout era, and they still needed that to win because that's the playoffs sometimes. That's the playoffs. So you have to still be a really good team. Like, heck, even the Predators who got swept out, they've made the playoffs like 6 out of something years, 6 out of the last 7 years. Like, they're a clear regular playoff team. The only reason they're not good anymore is because David Poile keeps kind of trying to throw something out there and patch it up with duct tape, and it's not working anymore.
Yeah.
And they're having to be bailed out by UC Saros so often. But like the Canucks are in the same kind of boat, just without any of the playoff experience to go with it yet right now, which is fine. You don't have to be. You can miss the playoffs a bunch of times and then suddenly make the playoffs 8 years in a row. The Predators were like that for years. Heck, we'll talk about my boys, the Florida Panthers. They were like that for ages. Like, you have to still be a really good team to get to win anything. Like, if you're shooting for only winning a round, it's not that you're not even dreaming big enough. It's that you do not believe in yourself enough to do the job properly, which is a massive red flag.
And I do want to clarify too. It's not about just for them, it wasn't about winning a round. It was getting to a round.
It was getting to a round.
That's it.
Like, they were like, oh, you know what's good for this team if we just make it in? Like, that was good enough for them. And it's
just
like,
get in, baby.
No.
You could be the Montreal Canadiens. You could be the Dallas Stars.
Yeah.
You could be like, there was no strategy. It was just like, look at all these guys who lucked their way to the top. We could do that.
Even though literally none of them actually ever did. Like, they were
none
all...
of them won.
Every single team, like the Kings sometimes come up because like, oh, well, they were an 8 seed and then they beat the Canucks and then they beat the Predator or I forget who they beat in the second round, but like the Blues, I think it was at the time. But it was like, yeah, but they were also a clearly better than 8 seed that totally underperformed for half the year and then fired their coach midway through, and that finally got them to play at the level they were expected to be. Correct. Right? Like, they were in reality a team that should have been third or fourth in the league probably.
Yeah,
at that time.
They just like had like a rough stretch, and then their underlying metrics, like Daryl Sutter hockey, were very, very good.
Yeah,
it was just like about them like struggling to get into the begin with.
Yeah, it was just about them finding their it finally clicking for them, and then it worked. Like, they had made the playoffs 2 years, the previous 3 years before that. So like it was clearly just a case of they're like they just underperformed and then they found it. The Canucks are not there yet, and that's again fine if you're believing in the sense of like, we're gonna make the cup, we're gonna be a true, serious, strong cup contender down the line. It doesn't matter when you make it. That's the point, right?
Yeah, it's just oh man,
it's
always funny when we get like on the Jim Benning like process.
I feel
talk,
bad because like I feel bad in the sense of like, people have already heard it 1,000 times. They don't need to hear it again.
But you can't stop yourself. It's like it's like a
curse.
An immovable object, or like unstoppable force meeting an immovable object. It's just like you have to talk about it because it's like a wound. And I think when I tweeted out, like when I was talking about earlier, like when I tweeted about like the cost of OEL and Garland relative to what like they gave up, someone replied to me like, get over it or whatever, or like just like ignore, or like get over it, ignore it, and
just feel better.
just
go outside.
Ignore it. Go outside. Go.
Have you ever
grass.
just thought about like not being sad?
You ever thought about just like, hey, just like being fine with how shit the team is?
Yeah.
But I said to the guy like the Jim Benning scars aren't just gonna heal because he's fired.
Yeah.
So long as Oliver Ekman-Larsson is on the team's books, that wound is open.
Yeah.
You can't just like be like, yeah, we're fine, we've moved on, because that he left with a dagger in their fucking back.
Yeah. Thanos snapped the entire half the universe away, but like, can you just like stop talking about it for once? Like, Jesus Christ, like, God, live in it, like,
live in the now, bro.
Brighten up, come on, like, brighten up, bud. Like, that would be Twitter if Thanos.
It absolutely.
And actually half the universe away. It'd just be like, yeah, but like, just like stop being a bummer. Like,
Thanos snap Twitter would be so funny.
That was over a year ago.
It'd be like someone being like, yeah, I lost my whole family, but also it killed my landlord, and he was a piece of shit. So thanks, Thanos. And like hash thank you, Than.
So true. And
then like
Thanos daddy.
Yeah,
like,
Than daddy. Like, ooh, he could snap that cock right in me. Ooh.
Oh God.
Anyway.
Yeah, Jesus Christ.
I'm gonna Google that right now.
Oh please. I would prefer if you didn't.
Daddy hentai.
I would prefer if you didn't. I mean, we have a button on it for that.
We do. The YouTube channel, we can play videos.
Yeah, we can play audio. Yeah, we got sounds. We got the Thanos gauntlet. Oh, I forgot that actually played the sound too. I forgot it played the actual audio. Cool? That's fantastic.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
But yeah, like in terms of the actual like playoffs going on right now, like yeah, the Predators clearly were a team that was relying solely on their goaltender for a while. It looked like, well, okay, we could kind of just encompass all the goalie issues in there, because I did want to talk about goaltending in this playoffs, because it's been weird as shit. That's another thing that kind of ties into the Canucks as well.
It's kind of funny because like going into this season, you and I made our predictions, and we said we don't trust X team for their goaltending. And throughout the season, the goaltending was not really the issue for many teams, except for Edmonton.
No.
And then you get to the playoffs, and all the people that we warned about not trusting their goaltending had goaltending issues. Carolina had issues. Colorado had issues. Nashville had issues. Like New York, I mean, can't really predict that, but you and I are both like, is Shesterkin really the solution for a whole season? Yeah. And sure enough, more issues.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh. Well, Louis
Nothing
Domingue.
to do with that. Louis Domingue, Canucks legend, came in. I mean, not really a legend anymore. Now that he's
he let in one that goal last night was rough. Like that was pretty brutal.
But it was completely expected because it's like all New York needs to do is remember like, oh right, this is Louis Domingue. Like
they just need to remember
we can beat him very easily.
Yeah, it was like a situation where it's like I feel like Louis Domingue already like punching way above his weight. He's done his best, right? Like played through 6 games. That's already stunning. But like so many teams, it wasn't even like we were like, oh, the goaltending's gonna stop being good. It was the idea. It was things like, okay, well, you can't like stuff that we not even necessarily stuff where we were pointing out at like specific teams, but like even stuff like situations specifically or surrounding the way the Canucks were approaching things with Demko, where I said multiple times, I'm like, the worst thing you can do is overplay him in hope of making the playoffs, and then he gets hurt. Yeah. Because if that injury ends up being a lingering issue, that's going to screw you over in years where you're actually really competing for it. Sure enough, they overplayed him and he got hurt in the last week of the season. And then you see that situation playing out with other teams like Saros in Nashville, where he got clearly overplayed. Yep. They and injured him, and that completely ended their year. And I don't know what his injury issue how bad his injury is, but like if that ends up affecting him long term, suddenly, holy shit, your great goaltender is not going to be able to carry the load the way he was before, and suddenly that shrinks your championship window like that much more. With the Rangers, it was a case of like, well, it was the same case with Demko, where it's like, okay, you need to make sure you have bona fide backup quality goaltending. Otherwise, if you don't, he's gonna be burnt by the time you actually get to any playoffs, right? Sure enough, Shesterkin, who cooled off, to be fair, cooled off down the stretch and definitely had a few more like human games for sure. But clearly it was like there were multiple cases during the season where they're like, okay, we don't trust Georgiev to win us games. Yeah. So we're going to play Shesterkin into the ground. We're going to lean on this kid
as much as possible.
And Shesterkin has been bad. He had the one very nice play in this last game where he did
the pass, the assist,
the great pass. I joked about the whole Mike Smith thing because the Oilers broadcasting game 1 was like, well, that's a high risk. He's a high risk, high reward player. It's like I'm sorry, but how often is the goaltender playing the puck out of the blue line something that any other player on his team can do? A high reward play. Yeah. That's what Shesterkin did. That's the high reward play. But again, that's a 1 in 1,000 times that works, right?
Yeah.
But it was a nice play. But overall, Shesterkin has looked clearly very, very human during these playoffs and been honestly at points a liability for the Rangers, right? And that's not his fault. It's the fault of they played him too much, and now he's gassed. And then you throw him into game 1, which is a triple overtime game. He plays a whole extra game on top of the 6 he's already done.
Yeah.
And you're wondering, hey, he's not as good. Maybe he sucks. It's like, nope, you just overplayed him. This is the problem.
The shit out of him.
And lots of goaltenders are like that. Andrei Vasilevsky is one of the 2 goaltenders. Him and Saros are the only 2 goalies, or maybe Hellebuck I might be throwing in there as well, who played more than Demko during the regular season. Vasilevsky's not been good for Tampa. He's had a couple okay games, but he's been not good. He's not been Andrei Vasilevsky at all.
The quote from what's his name? John Cooper was so funny when he was like, if Jack Campbell's going to have a 3.4 goals against average, we'll take it. It's like, buddy, Andrei Vasilevsky's letting in every shot.
Yeah.
He to his credit, when it actually matters, when it's third period or overtime, he's usually pretty tight and
he
pretty
finds
good.
He finds that last
he remembers
dose of energy.
Yeah, he remembers oh, I'm actually really good. I probably shouldn't let in a goal. But he hasn't been good. No. Jack Campbell hasn't been good either.
Yeah.
That's why this playoffs is so funny. It's going to come down to basically who can score more.
Who can score more, and honestly, whose goalie is still standing at the end. Because so many goaltenders, the goalies that haven't been suddenly bad in goal have been, the other half are all injured. The only goaltenders that have been consistently strong throughout the playoffs are Jake Ottinger, Jacob Markstrom, and Mike and asterisk Mike Smith, but even he, at some point that's gonna crack.
I mean,
that bridge is
cracked
gonna fall
right
apart.
away with his giveaway.
With the giveaway,
yeah,
a fantastic giveaway.
But like, the two best goalies in the entire playoffs right now are playing against each other.
Yeah, one of them's gone.
Markstrom and what's his name?
And Ottinger.
Yeah, and one of them's gonna be gone after this round, which is so funny because it's like all either those teams need to do is just like get through the next round and basically just like survive. The next three because you should be fine.
Because even the goaltenders that have played well, so many of them have gotten hurt. Like Darcy Kemper. Again, we talked about Colorado. How many times, Cody, did we talk about Colorado and Carolina? Hey, I'm very concerned that you invested fully in injury-prone goaltenders, considering you've had a history of getting screwed in the playoffs by having injury-prone goaltenders.
Yeah.
And sure enough, poor Darcy Kemper, guy can't catch a fucking break. Literally gets, like, the stick goes through the cat's eye portion of his mask and clips him in the eye, and he's...
He didn't get injured because, like, he did something stupid. It was complete, like, unluck.
But that's just him. Like, and that happens to him year over year where he just has the worst injury luck in the world and some complete freak accident puts him out for ages, and it sucks. And for Colorado, like, Pavel Francouz was not particularly good in the games that he played in his relief, right? And I'm just looking at, like, St. Louis, who does have Jordan Binnington playing well, and even Ville Husso, who looked a little... off in the beginning.
He looked okay, but it was like you need someone to find that extra gear, and Jordan Binnington, for all of his faults, did find the gear that they needed. And so you look at that matchup in the second round, you're like, St. Louis has like 20 goal scorers, and they play heavy hockey, and they're getting goaltending. Yeah. Like,
Colorado might be in a lot of trouble just based on that alone. Like the fact that they have steady goaltending and the Habs don't anymore. Unless Kemper comes back, then they might be okay.
Jordan Binnington put up a 1.67 goals against average and a 943 save percentage in 3 games against Minnesota.
Jesus Christ. And no, like...
And Minnesota's not a joke. Like, that's...
Minnesota's not a joke. I mean, they didn't exactly play fantastic in the last couple games. And there was, like, the whole thing with, like, I don't know why they decided to sit Fleury for game 6. He was clearly not the issue with why they were losing.
That was definitely like a baffling call. It's like, why would you put in your goalie who's completely cold? Just stick with what you got.
Yeah.
Like, that's not fair to do the Cam Talbot. Like,
no.
And if you were hoping to retain him after this year, like, he's probably gonna be like, well, fuck that.
You threw me into a game where I hadn't played in 5 and I got lit up because
you made me the scapegoat. Like, why the hell would I want to stick around?
Yeah. Like, I don't know why that was a baffling call in so many stretches, just because, like, again, the Wild are in a lot of trouble, like, next year. Yeah. They had to put all their eggs into this basket because it was all they have, because now they've got the Parise and Suter buyouts, like, cap hits, gonna wreck them for years.
Yeah.
The Wild had to go all in, but then for some reason they kind of didn't. Like, they kind of half in.
They did like a 50-50 where it was like, we're going to go kind of all in, but we're not going to trade any of our picks.
They put half their body in the pool and were like, but then they were like, oh, well, I don't want to get my hair wet. Like, they were like, they in the end screwed them here. Cause they were just like, well, like, they were clearly in a stuck spot, but they didn't have the horses to get it done all the way. Kirill Kaprizov is a fantastic hockey player, but him and like Joel Eriksson can only take you so far.
You only do so much with that. So
the Wild, goodbye to them. Yeah. Goodbye to Nashville.
Colorado.
Colorado.
A little bit of danger.
Carolina tonight in a Game 7. I mean, okay. I guess that's all that's left to talk about is all the Game 7s.
We've got starting tonight. We've got 3 with Carolina, Boston, Edmonton, LA, and Toronto, Tampa Bay Lightning, and those are going to be 3 really awesome games.
Yes.
Yes. I'm glad that they staggered them too. We've got Carolina, Boston starting pretty soon here. Edmonton, LA, like, purely for memes, you gotta hope LA wins.
Troy Stecher is going to score the game-winning goal.
I would love that. Frankly, I would love.
Or it's going to be Edler.
Oh, fuck.
That'd be
so funny.
Incredible. I would love that. I can't tell you how much I would love that if he scores, like, the game winner.
Me too.
Like, again, I'm rooting so hard for the Kings just because I want to see, like, which is so weird for me because I did not like the Kings for years. And, like, But like, and I feel weird about it, but I'm like, I want to see Troy Stetcher, who's a Conn Smythe candidate a little bit right now with 4 points in 3 games.
Come
including
on.
like,
give it to him.
Yeah, including assist on a game winner, like
matchup minutes against Connor McDavid.
Like,
come on.
done a decent job with it. Like,
yeah.
Holy cow.
Oh yeah, part of me is like the Kings of like the 2000s were all heavy hockey, dirty hits, like. It was easy to root against them, right? But this, like, you have to respect a team that, like, commits to their rebuild and does it properly in, like, a few years. Yeah. Like, so, same reason why I'm like, I hope the Leafs get past their hump and are able to move forward with their series because I appreciate the process. I appreciate the Kings process, and that's kind of what I root for. Mm-hmm. There's, I don't have any players on any of these teams that I, like, actively, like, dislike.
I do.
So, I mean,
but that's for different reasons. That's completely different reasons.
There's definitely a Tony DeAngelo. And like
that's
people
true.
That, like, character-wise, where you're just like,
I keep forgetting about him.
I don't want Carolina to win purely because they have Tony DeAngelo,
which sucks because the rest of the team is so cool.
yeah, I guess so. But like,
yeah, literally, it's him and that's it. And then, I guess Max Domi to a degree too.
Max Domi is not great.
But even he, like, if it was just like we talked about on the Scrapped episode, like Jamie mentioned, like if it was just Max Domi. You'd be fine with. You'd still kind of like. You'd be okay with Carolina, more or less, right? Like it's because of the other guy that you really went to. That everybody really was like, well, they've lost my interest.
Yeah, here's the tier: is like good process, fun to watch.
Yes.
Currently employs former writers of CanucksArmy.com.
That's right.
And then below it is like how much I dislike some of the people on their team.
Yeah.
And so right now, the Carolina Hurricanes have Reese Jessup on their analyst staff. So it's like I have to root for them.
Yeah.
Even though I fucking dislike Tony D.
Yeah.
So and Max Domi is not great either.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Speaking of good process, they've also really hedged their bets in a way where they've gone cheap on a lot of players and gone to every draft trading down to acquire more picks, like a pure volume approach, and you have to respect that because it'll probably pay off with them having way better depth than any NHL team moving forward. But and also you have to root against the Bruins too.
Oh yeah, well, like, and I feel bad. Like, I feel bad for the goaltending for the Bruins because they've actually really done a fantastic job for the Bruins.
Swayman and Ullmark.
Swayman
in particular because Ullmark did not look good in the first 2 games, but kind of Swayman came in relief and gave them something to lean on a bit, which was good for them.
Yeah. And with Carolina, the big worry is, okay, can Antti Raanta stay healthy? Because there was the scare in the second game where David Pastrnak ran him, and like, okay, people are like, he was losing his balance. You don't reach out at the goaltender when you're losing your balance. That's not your first. Your first instinct isn't to go, I'm gonna like lean in. Like he's hockey stopping, so he's going backwards as he's falling.
Yeah,
and then suddenly his body jerks forward and grabs at the goalie's head, like swings at the goalie's head. Like, come on. No. That was like, come on. Even if it wasn't on like it wasn't trying to like hurt him, it was still a stupid way to try and stop yourself from going forward. They're like, he's trying to go away from the goaltender. You don't lean out at the goalie. You're not leaning out to grab his jersey to pull him with you. Like, come on. Like, that was like a scare for them, especially because again, Ronta's injury prone and Anderson's still out. Mm. I mean, if Freddie Anderson comes back at some point, they're gonna be total, like, again, like, barring knock on wood on any like unforeseen circumstances, they'll be fine, more or less. But, and honestly, like for Carolina, I really think that a lot of the reason why this is going to Game 7 is simply because TD Garden is a bit of a boogeyman for them. Like they look noticeably less confident in themselves in games in Boston in particular.
Yeah, they not really look good.
Yeah,
so.
Which is a lot of teams kryptonite. Like the
fair enough.
Canucks know a thing or two about that. I mean, the Leafs certainly do. Like that's so for some teams, like it's just like this building is not a building I feel I have a hard time playing in this building. That can sometimes be all it is.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
I think for a couple teams in these playoffs, it's very much if you can get past this one particular like issue that's been plaguing you for a while, you might be able to finally go on that deep run.
Yeah.
And for Carolina, that's that. I think they're going to win tonight. I think they're going to win Game 7. I'd be surprised. I'd honestly be surprised if Boston won. I feel very confident with Carolina. Probably the most confident out of any Game 7 as to who's going to win. I would say Carolina's the one I have the most confidence in.
I'm pretty sure they're going to choke.
You think that really?
Yeah.
That would suck for the quality of hockey process and everything if they did.
Yeah.
But like it's
just a vibe I got.
I
had a vibe that Leafs were not going to win Game 6, and sure enough.
Sure. I mean, that one I kind of also saw coming. It looked almost like they might solve that one. Let's talk about Toronto because that's today. Because that's also today. Like you said, Vancouverites love to hate on Toronto, but again, that's more to do with I think a lot more to do with the insufferable nature of the some
fan base
people
and
on
the media
Twitter
that definitely
the media
prioritize them.
But at the same time, look, we know they're going to be annoying about the Leafs at all times. So let's at least hope if they're going to be annoying about the Leafs at all times, let's at least hope they're good enough to make it worthwhile. So because I don't want to hear another 3 months of the Leafs failed in the first round again, I don't want to hear that again. I'm so sick of that. And it's a time is Kyle Dubas and his thick glasses too much of a nerd? Yeah. Should all right.
Can
you hear
really trust a nerd?
You got a panel of Leafs fans being so gentlemen, is it time for us to give that nerd Kyle Dubas a big ol' wedgie and steal his lunch money because he's not doing enough? Because he's a nerd.
Because he's a stupid nerd who does stupid book learning.
He doesn't watch. He's clearly looking at his spreadsheets during the game, that kind of thing. Toronto's actually Toronto's made some weird, a couple weird choices in how they handle things, but overall, the team is very good. Is really fun to watch. They play really interesting hockey.
They're very well constructed.
They're well constructed, even though they give up a lot of chances and have to rely on some decent goaltending, like Jack Campbell.
Yeah.
And to Jack Campbell's credit, he has, I would say, outplayed Vasilevsky at points during this series quite a few times. It is it's one of those things where it's I would like to see Toronto get over that one hump because it's it sucks that they keep missing for the sport. That it's not fun when they're good players miss.
And Clay Imu's thumbs up gif on Canucks Twitter, some jokes are just tired. And so I don't want to hear about how they haven't gotten past the first round in X years. I just don't care anymore.
Yeah, give us something new to make fun of the Leafs for.
I think...
Oh, you can't make it past the second round now.
It would actually be so funny. We were talking about this, I don't even know when. It would be really funny if this was the year they actually got over the hump and then just straight up won, because then you could never make fun of them again.
God,
you really couldn't.
Especially
if they win.
As a Canucks fan, you couldn't.
No, look, if you're any fan, you can't ever be oh, it took you 67 years to win. It's okay, but they won.
Yeah.
Who gives a shit?
Nowadays, I'm kind of sometimes the Leafs haven't won in 50-something years. It's the longest drought in NHL history, but they still won 11 before that. Yeah. They still have a championship banner sitting in the rafters that we don't.
And if anything, the last 20 years have shown how hard it is for for one team to just dominate like they used to in the 60s and 70s. It's there's been dynasties, certainly, but those have fallen off, and now it's who's had the most sustainable run of success as a franchise and finally got over the hump.
Yeah.
It was okay, the Kings, they had their dynasty. Chicago had their dynasty. Pittsburgh. And it was okay, Pittsburgh now.
And even Pittsburgh, there was a delay between one and two.
A huge delay.
Yeah.
And people during that time were is it time to trade Malkin? Is it time to trade Cosby? Because they're not doing it anymore.
God, yeah, I remember that. That was weird times. And same thing with Tampa, same thing. Took them ages to finally get through.
Yeah, they were good and missed playoffs multiple times, but they stuck with their process and finally got over the hump and won back to back. So it's is Toronto now in that boat, or are they at the start of their boat? Are they the 2011 Tampa Bay Lightning who get to playoffs, get through a couple rounds, but then they miss next year and then they struggle for quite a while, reach a final once, lose, and then they still take some time to grow. They're still very young in their actual success period, right? they were only tanking 7 years ago.
Yeah.
Austin Matthews. Like, it took them a while to get to this point, but they still haven't had technically the run of playoff success. So this year is probably the start where it's like, okay, it actually needs to happen now.
Yeah, they're still young enough that you play your cards right. You could be contending for championships for the next another 7, 6, 8 after this, even maybe.
Like we were saying, like they've still got their depth completely locked up, or not locked up. They've got their stars completely locked up, and they've shown a good job at being able to fill in the edges with cheap, league minimum deals. So if they can keep doing that and found their method of success, it's going to work for them in theory.
Do you think, like, if let's say they lose tonight, do you think everyone overreacts, including like upper management and stuff, and starts like just fire sale? Because here's the thing, like, in a way, like, it shouldn't matter, because again, like we said at the beginning of the series, like, I think, like, I forget if you were in the same boat, but I remember saying at the beginning, I'm like, oh, I actually regret picking Tampa in this series, not because I don't think they're probably the better team, but I honestly think Toronto's in a spot where they're playing a little bit more freely than they have to. Now might be a different story because it's a game 7, and we know how much they struggle in those.
Yeah.
But like, it's still a case of like, well, you're playing the defending Stanley Cup champions, the defending back-to-back Cup champions. Like, it's hard to really look at this and be like, well, you failed miserably. Like,
yeah, I definitely think there's like an asterisk where it's like, I don't think their ownership is stupid enough to be like, let's let another team have Kyle Dubas and Lawrence Gilman and whatever. Because clearly what they've done has led to their teams getting to playoffs, and unfortunately, the draws they've been getting have been fucking brutal.
Yeah.
Like,
except for Montreal. That was
completely blew it against Montreal. But again, a part of me is like, they lost John Tavares in probably the most horrific fashion imaginable. And that's like a major leader on their team. So it's like, yeah, they got embarrassed, but at the same time, like, when you watch your captain like motionless, nearly dead on the ice, and then are asked to play a playoff game, that's probably pretty fucking difficult to do. So I can't really, like, I can fault them, but at the same time, I'm like, there's an asterisk.
Yeah.
Here again, there's another asterisk. You're coming against the defending 2-time Stanley Cup champion, who were just as good as they've always been in the regular season.
Yep.
And they've got all their players available to them. Like, you're playing a powerhouse in the opening round. I think they'd be so stupid to clean house after this.
Yeah.
Will they do it?
I don't.
Maybe
if fans make enough like of a ruckus about it and like start like complaining about everything, which is totally possible with them. But like, no, Toronto. I honestly think this might be the night Toronto finally figures it out. And if they do, I still think they're in a bit of a tough spot because of how the playoff seeding works. Because I don't think they're ready to beat another team that we're going to talk about, I think, at the end here. But they're definitely at a point now, I think, where not that they haven't figured. They kind of showed they figured it out a little bit, how to play under pressure. Like the Lightning were up 2-0 in that game in that game 5. They were up 2-0. Yeah. And the Leafs stormed all the way back, took the lead, got scored on pretty quick after the go-ahead goal, but then came back and won it anyway in regulation. And then even in game 6, they played really well. They came back from another deficit just to take the lead again against Tampa. Mm-hmm. They clearly have a few extra, like, there's a little extra fight there that they, in games where before in the playoffs, they might have just rolled over and kind of just went, well, we're cooked. Like,
yeah.
Those cases, they actually kind of did a much better job than in years past. So I actually think they've got a good shot tonight. I'm picking Toronto tonight.
I'm not gonna pick anyone because
that's a good call.
Because it's just.
It'll be funny if they lose anyway. It'll still be funny.
It'll still be funny. It'll just be like the jokes will be tired and just be like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's like riot jokes in 2021. It's old and boring. And
it's old hat. We need something new.
And we make them more than everybody else now. Yeah. So it's like, you can't really do that anymore. It doesn't work. Yeah. Then Oilers Kings.
Oilers Kings all the way. Fuck Evander Kane. I don't like it. I don't like Connor McDavid at all. I hate him as a person.
I don't know if I honestly, I think he's such a like, he is if he is like such a like relatively like boring individual off the ice that I'm like honestly like I don't have much of an opinion on him at this point.
I absolutely have an
he's
opinion on him. After the Ethan Bear thing in the playoffs and him getting all the hate he got, and Connor McDavid took like 3 days to come out with like this bland, emotionless, like he is a teammate. Please don't be mean.
God, I forgot.
Please stop being racist towards him. The fact that it took him like 3 days, like, weird. Fuck you. You're not a captain.
I don't like his house.
I don't like his creepy serial killer house.
like, oh my God. Why? Like, color is great. Use some color in your house, please. Black and white is there. I liked Arash's tweet where he's like, I'm waiting to see the Remax listing just pop up the second they lose. Like, it's so funny. I am Edmonton. I really don't want to see Edmonton go any farther. The hatred that a lot of Vancouver Canucks fans reserve for the Leafs is kind of where I'm at with like the Alberta teams. Like, I don't like the Alberta teams one bit. It's weird. And like Edmonton, I'm just like, yeah, I do like Leon Draisaitl. I think Leon Draisaitl's a very fun player to watch, but like, yeah, I don't want to see Duncan Keith and Evander Kane getting rewarded for the weird stuff that they do. But at the end of the day, Mike Smith is prone to do something stupid here. He's due. I think we're going to see something funny today.
At the very least, we are going to get some comedy.
And then tomorrow it's we got Penguins Rangers, which again, like it's the one series out of the group that I'm like, I honestly have no.
You're just like indifferent.
I'm very indifferent. Like it's one of those things where I'm like, whoever gets through, I'm like happy for them. I'm like, good for you, you got through. I guess if I were to sum it up properly,
I have no strong feelings one way or the other.
Yeah, that's where I'd put it. It's very much whoever wins Game 7, good for them. I picked New York, but I'm not going to be like livid if the Penguins get through. Like I like both teams for good reasons. Jake Gensel, by the way, like we talked about this on DMs the other day. Like he might be one of the most clutch players in the playoffs have seen in the last in this era, right? Like there is something about that guy where he just finds this other level, like other 5 levels in the playoffs for no reason. He's
a very good playoff performer. What a find by current Canucks GM Jim Rutherford.
That might be us. It could be us.
Hey, it could be the Canucks.
It could be us soon. Who knows? Maybe it's already here. Maybe it's just maybe just Travis Dermott.
Yeah. Do you want to quickly touch on your boys?
Yes, I do. I want to touch on my on.
You want to touch your boys?
I do not want to do that.
You want to touch them?
No, I really don't. But you got the jersey there. I'm wearing the shirt today. I'm wearing the shirt. What is it? It's the very stupid Facebook shirt that I found, which is
2/3 of the earth is covered in boys. That I'd like to touch. 2/3 of the earth
is covered by water. The other third is covered by Roberto Luongo, which is fantastic. I want Lou to win a cup so badly. I don't care how he does. Obviously, he can't do it as a player anymore. It's got to come in the front office. But oh my God, I'm not again, when you're media, it's hard to be fans of teams anymore. When Carter Verhaeghe scored that OT winner, I leapt off the couch and I was so happy for Florida.
I was laughing so hard because a part of me was just like, the Caps could not give a fuck. They're just like, well, we won a cup a couple of years ago. We don't give a shit.
I mean, they
back to golfing.
Yeah, back to golfing. I mean, they actually looked really good for large parts of that series. Florida is, I said it 1,000 times, Florida, the boogeyman for them is they just have to win a round and they'll be fine in the same way that Toronto is. They finally did it. I think they're gonna go on a nice run here. This is Bobrovsky is a little bit of a. I mean Bobrovsky's Bobrovsky. I'm always a little worried about him.
He might be off the job. He might be on the job.
It really does depend game to game, but they have enough depth that they can make up for it on the blue line and with their scoring. Like they have the people in front of him that they can work with it regardless.
And it did genuinely seem like they were about to choke away the series, and they didn't.
It really did at one. They saved their bacon in that game 5. Claude Giroux coming up clutch.
Finally, fucking loser.
It took him some time, but man, he looked good. Carter Verhaeghe is incredible, by the way. That's another guy that's a guy that Drance brings up all the time as like who you should be shooting for as a team in like your AHL depth and like finding those like nuggets, because he was in the Tampa Bay Lightning system, kind of just hiding there. Like he could have been on that core group for years.
Well, I think like the deal was like I don't think he's getting paid that much.
Oh, it's dirt
right
cheap for
like,
what he's
like
bringing.
Relatively speaking. Like yeah, he's getting paid like not that much, but I think Tampa was in the boat where they were like, we'd like to keep him. We've obviously invested a ton of development time in making him into something for us. He was good for us in our cup run or whatever. But we can't pay him, unfortunately. We have to let him go, which I'm sure I don't know if they regret it because like they still won a second cup without him. You know what I mean? Like it's not like
the Lightning don't regret it at all because they literally the only reason he's not on their team is they just didn't have the room for him, right? It's not a loss to them. It's just a loss to more so a loss to every other team that could have had Carter Verhaeghe and didn't, right? Like and didn't.
It's one of those things too where like he was in Syracuse for 2 years and he finished one of the years with like an above point per game pace, and that was I think the first year that I started covering the team, and I think I remember even being like this is a guy the Canucks should be after because he'll be cheap and can probably be an NHL depth piece like moving forward. Tampa knew that too. That's why they stuck around with him. Contributed in their cup run. I don't think he produced that well. Like he only had like a couple points, but it wasn't like the worst thing in the world.
No.
And then Florida was like, hey, here's a free asset who we can probably throw on our second line and he'll actually be like legit.
Yeah.
And he has been.
I could. This is a tangent for another show, but like the whole thing with like, I'll always wonder like, had the Panthers not panicked when they did the short-lived Computer Boys era, what would have happened had they done what they were planning and set out to do, which was they were clearing cap space at one point to offer sheet Nikita Kucherov, had that worked, what might have happened had they been given the reins to keep going, like. That could have been something. But like now they're getting there. Now they're getting there as a President's Trophy winner. By next show, I promise I will have some Panthers props for the shelf. I sent a picture to you guys yesterday of some plastic rats that I was looking at on Amazon. I gotta say the lack of options I have for plastic rat purchasing is very disappointing. I expected more.
You just gotta find some dead rats.
I just gotta find some real ones. Yeah. And then was there one more Game 7? Oh yeah, Dallas Calgary. That was the last one we had.
But we don't want to talk about that because we'll put everyone to sleep just the way that series has put everyone else to sleep. We put everyone else to sleep. And I believe we have some punishment we got to get to here. We do. We'll throw it to an ad or something. I don't know.
We'll throw it to it right now.
All right, folks, we're back.
Yes, we are. Unfortunately,
Lachlan is regretting his life choices because he made a bet.
Yeah, and
it was a poor bet.
What was that bet again, Cody?
I have no idea, actually. I completely forgot.
So the bet was okay. So we made a bet, I think, in the last week of the season that if the Canucks made the playoffs, you were gonna have to eat spicy hot chicken.
Right, that's what it was.
But if they missed, I was gonna have to eat spicy hot chicken because they were kind of doing pretty well at the time. At the time, they looked like there was at least a slim chance that they were gonna get there.
You bought in.
I sure bought in.
Like a fool.
Yeah, I bought high and sold low.
Yes. And what a low we've reached because.
What a low we've reached.
We've acquired from the YouTube program Hot Ones Da Bomb. We're not gonna show it. For our YouTube channel's sake.
We can show it.
I'm going to quickly flash it just so we don't get, like, DMCA'd or whatever.
Yeah, there it is. Can you see the label? There you go. Oh, yeah, we can get DMCA'd on labels. That's fine.
Well, we just want to get... We don't want your suffering to be in vain.
In vain. Okay, so...
I'm a big spice guy, and I can tell you right now, this does not smell good.
It doesn't smell... Does it smell like death?
Well, not death, but just not good.
Okay.
It's like some hot sauces have like a good like sweet smell to it, like a little flavor. This smells a little flat.
It smells a little bit like green olives, which I hate. So, like, I like black olives on pizza. Green olives, no, never. Yeah, this smells like the vinegary green olive.
It's not great.
No, it isn't. And I'm gonna.
If I were you, I would not soil the entire Popeye's chicken sandwich here. Yeah. I would cut off some of the chicken and then just dab that on the bomb.
Okay, you think so you wouldn't even say like I should put it in like half, like cut the bun in half and go for it.
I would get a knife, I would cut out a piece of the chicken, put it on your thing, and then pour the bomb on there, because I think that's more fitting to the spicy food challenge, whereas if you just ruin,
bread covers it.
Yeah, it covers it. The cheese covers the mayo, the pickle. Like, you don't want that. You really want to suffer.
Is that big enough, or should I go bigger here?
I would have gone smaller, frankly.
You know what?
Because I'm just looking at a Popeye's chicken sandwich and I'm like, don't ruin it.
Don't ruin this.
Don't ruin like the only good thing you're gonna have for the rest of your night.
Yeah, I'm gonna be sitting on my couch just like drinking milk for the rest of the day, aren't I?
I wouldn't cover the napkins either, because you're gonna need that.
That's a good call. Thank you. So yeah. I'm also consider myself pretty good at handling spice. Like I'm part Mexican, so I've grown up with like hot sauce available. I've always I was the kid at Christmas one year who literally dunked his I don't know if you've ever had pastizzi before. It's a Maltese a paste, like a ricotta cheese, almost like a croissant kind of thing. Like they're
I like Maltesers.
Yeah, and there you go. Maltesers, very different. But I just dunked it in a pool of Tabasco and just went to town on it. By the point my lips turned blue.
That is Tabasco.
So Tabasco is like a Scoville unit. I think they said at highest it gets like 40,000 or something. So it is pretty spicy. This is over 100,000.
I was gonna say Tabasco is not like a hot sauce. This is a hot.
Really,
sauce.
You don't consider what's the hottest sauce you've ever had? Would you say? Was
I don't know. It had scorpion peppers in it, and
oh really?
I think some kind of lime or something.
So okay. So
it was hot.
Okay, so is that enough there? What do you think? I mean, you can add more if you want here.
Don't kill yourself.
I mean, might as well at this point, right?
You're getting a good. That looks like a good dollop right there.
Yeah. Can the thing see that? There you go. Okay. Yeah, because I have an idea of what I think this is going to taste like, in the sense of I don't think it's going to taste like spicy. It's not. I think based on the reactions I've seen,
it's just going to be hot.
Yeah, it's going to taste almost like literally just like a fire. It's not going to taste like anything good. It's going to
have shitty burning flavor, and then your tongue's going to feel like on fire, which is fine and great for content.
This is great. This is great for content. But if this is my last, if this is my final moments, Cody, just please make sure that you sell my stuff at a reasonable price, okay?
Yeah,
don't give it away. That's my one ask. If it gets Goodwilled, I'm haunting you.
I need a car, so I'll definitely overprice it.
Okay, perfect, fantastic. All right here. So, oh god, I can see the freaking pepper strands,
pepper grains in there.
All right. I guess my last words right now would be, Canucks, you better not let me down next year. All right, here we go.
Frankly, just don't ever bet on them again. Oh man, you took a huge bite. Ooh. Ew, that looks dank. But Popeye's chicken is so good that you're honestly probably masking most of the shitty hot sauce flavor.
Oh god. It's getting there. It's getting worse.
Okay.
Ooh, that's spicy.
Okay, there's habanero peppers.
I'm trying not to chew into the mic.
Salt, chipotle puree, orange juice, concentrate, natural pepper flavoring, tomato paste. Sodium benzoate. That's bad.
That's really bad.
But that's to preserve freshness. So
whoa, that's really hot.
So, anyways, folks.
Oh god.
We're not gonna keep this little closer that long, because frankly, it's important to point out you never ever bet on the Vancouver Canucks. That's just really dumb. I would never bet.
Oh, I'm not going for the milk yet. Oh, I cannot tell you how bad this is getting.
Well, anyways, folks, thanks for tuning into this Saturday edition, this live edition. Live from the Crease Cave. I have been Cody Sievertson. You can follow me at Cody Sievertson on Twitter. My writing is ahlnucksharvest.com, and you can see me on canucksarmy.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our patreon.com/CreaseCast. We have $1 and $5 tiers. Our YouTube channel is youtube.com/CreaseCast. Ding that bell. Leave us some comments. We love them. Like all the videos. We appreciate your guys' support. Lachlan, where can they find you?
I cannot stress to you that it feels like my entire mouth was stung by a bee. You can find me on Twitter at Lach and the Crease. You can find my writing work at Canucks Army. I write there very frequently. I'm writing a bunch of stuff this weekend, so please give it a look in case. But although I might die right now, so wow, that's hot. Oh,
thanks for tuning in, folks. We really appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye, guys.